Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another segment of our webinar series, which will be the EMA's Knowledge Series 2020, which will be commemorating our 25th anniversary as an organization. This afternoon, we'll be looking at the EMA's investigation process. But before I do that, I will just like to raise some housekeeping issues, or matters rather. We will be on two platforms, both Zoom and Facebook Live. With the Zoom platform, we urge you to pose your questions in the chat box. Unfortunately, we will not be entertaining any raised hands or live questions. So please pose your questions in the chat box. And on Facebook, we will also, as I said before, be going live, and there will be the comment section for you to pose your questions, and there will be someone to address them there. This session is also being recorded, and it will be uploaded to our website, which is www.ema.co.tt, www.ema.co.tt, and there will be a link there which will send you to our YouTube page, which is Environmental Management Authority. And that should be up by the end of tomorrow. So you'll have an opportunity to look at the proceedings of today once again. I would also like to let you know that during the time frame, if we're not able to address your questions, you can please send them to our dedicated site or email address, which is EMEwebinars, one word, at ema.co.tt, EMEwebinars, with an S, one word, at ema.co.tt. So I will now like to introduce our presenters. Our first presenter is Mr. Steve Lal-Bihari. Steve is a regional coordinator attached to the Emergency Response and Investigations Unit. Steve has been with the EMA for 10 years, and his background is in geology with field training in terrestrial, coastal, and marine environment. The next presenter will be Matthew Jordan, who has been with the EMA for almost 6 years. Matthew has a background in environmental management as well as in energy management, sustainable energy management. And then Shay Ferdinand will also be with us. He will be working with the Facebook team as well as our team upstairs. And Shay is an an emergency response investigation officer 1. He has been with the EMA for close to 6 years as well. And he has a background in biology, biotechnology, quality management, and water quality management. So without any further delays, I would now like to introduce our presenters, and we'll start with Steve Lal-Bihari, who will begin this afternoon's presentations on the EMA's role in investigation process. Steve?
Hi, welcome to the EMA's presentation this afternoon, where we will focus on the complaints investigation process. Just to give you an idea of the overview of what is going to be presented, first we'll discuss how to lodge a complaint. This will be followed by a summarized investigation process flowchart, which is going to be repeated several times purposely throughout the presentation so that you will have an idea for ease of reference what we are discussing. We will discuss complaints, whether it's in the EMA's jurisdiction or not, some aspects of the EMA's legislation and the EMA Act regarding complaints and coordination. We will take a look at state agencies and concurrent jurisdiction to the EMA when it comes to approvals, how we conduct site visits and what happens after the site visit, the EMA Act when it comes to environmental requirements, the importance of receiving feedback from these other agencies as part of our investigation process, and how we determine whether enforcement or some other action to take place. And finally, in terms of how the complaints are resolved. Thereafter, we will look in terms of the history and role of the ERI, Emergency Response and Investigations Unit. We will take a look at the EMA Act when it comes to environmental emergencies, and round off today's presentation with how complainants can assist the EMA, and then we will entertain questions and provide answers. So now, in terms of lodging a complaint, there are several channels that you can lodge a complaint to the EMA. The first one being via telephone. 226 for EMA, which is 4362, and you select the option 2, where someone will answer and receive the information and guide you through the process. You also have the option of email or submitting a complaint form, which you can access from the EMA's website, writing to the EMA via mail. Some of our complaints actually come from meetings that we attend, such as regional coordinating meetings and public meetings. Complaints are also captured from the media, the television, the print, or the radio. Sometimes a complaint will come in the form of referrals, both internally and externally. And then the final way, in terms of a complaint, which is to deal with environmental emergencies, you can contact us at 680-9588. So this chart here is a simplified flow chart in terms of what is our investigation process at the EMA. The complaints are received, and then there's a bit of initial evaluation where the ticket is then assigned to an investigating officer. If further information is required, the complainant or the person lodging the information will be contacted for it. There's some sort of assessment and where we'll identify other agencies that could be involved. Where applicable, we'll request a joint interagency site visit so that everyone can address the matter at the same time. Thereafter, a site visit is done and the assessment is done of the findings from that visit. This will then be followed by feedback from the other agencies and whether they have approval, whether they would give approval for the activity on site. We will then determine what is the next course of action, whether the EMA can pursue enforcement action or whatever else in terms of applying for a permit. And hopefully by the end of this process, we'll be able to resolve the complaint. So this slide will be repeated throughout just to keep you for easy reference of the material being presented. The complaints hotline is basically the line that is answered by the hotline unit. It is available Mondays to Fridays between 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There's a record of all complaints being received by the EMA through this unit, which is managed by the Complaints Database Management System, which we call ZOHO. For a new complaint, a unique identifier or ticket number is generated. According to the information, it may escalate to environmental emergencies, which we'll discuss later on. All actions are recorded where actions are taken internally and externally for the particular complaint. For existing complaint, the complainant is updated upon request by the question. Through the hotline as well, we could receive feedback from the complainant, and this is important where information updated is provided to the investigating officer to determine the next course of action. A complainant may also request information through hotline if there's a pending court matter or if they need information, which will guide them through the Freedom of Information process. At all times, we also inform the complainant of other agencies that they need to consult with and lodge a complaint in order to get to seek redress for their complaint. Through the hotline, we've had improved public perception because all of our interactions are courteous and professional. We assist in public education, which we direct persons to the website where all the information is available. Sometimes persons just want to get some guidance, so we assist with the public education. And then some complaints may be applicable to a permit issued by the EMA. In such cases, we will direct all information to the relevant department so that they can follow up with further action. When all of this information is compiled and issued on a ticket, it's then assigned to an investigating officer. So this here is a snapshot of our ZOHO interface. It has all the information that we need to do and has a running record of all actions taken. In the event that anyone can review the information so that we can provide timely updates. There are some complaints, unfortunately, that are not under the EMA's jurisdiction. Yes, the environment includes everything, but the EMA, we are guided by the EMA Act. And some of these complaints include noise from animals, bushfires, noise from vehicles, clogged drains, squatting, landslides, leaking septic tanks, and many more. These matters, unfortunately, are not within the purview and jurisdiction of the EMA. And later on, we'll identify which agency you can contact. This here is just a graph to give you an idea of the number of complaints that we've received last year in 2019. It averages about 40 complaints per month, and there are some peak times to the early part of the year and the latter part, which may coincide during the carnival festivities. This pie chart gives a distribution of the type of complaints that we receive by the EMA. To the top left, you'll see that 30% of it involves noise pollution. However, if you quantify all the other complaints in terms of designated activities under the CEC rules, air pollution, environmental degradation, you'll see that the majority of complaints are coming from environmental issues. There are challenges with complaints, and we'd like to highlight here what are some of the challenges that impact our duty to perform investigations. The first one, the complainant may call for every and anything, not understanding what the EMA's role and function is, and what we can do and what we cannot do. Just to let you know that the EMA makes every effort to respond to citizens' complaints, in particular calls received by our hotline. Another challenge is complainants do not engage the agencies. So it is through the hotline and in any interaction that we in the investigations we have with the complainant, we always re-emphasize that you need to reach out to the other agencies, lodge a complaint, and follow up with the agencies in terms of what actions they are taking separate and apart from the EMA's function. Third challenge would be that there is insufficient information from the complainant to conduct an investigation. Until such time that the information is sufficient, we will not be able to pursue with an investigation. In other cases, there may be invalid complaints due to the complainant's personal grievances or other issues, and this in some ways impact and sometimes get our resources caught up in other things that we should be prioritizing for other matters. We do receive anonymous complaints, and some of the challenges with this is that the information may be incorrect at some times, and we may not have contact information to follow up with the person in terms of with the investigation, and therefore this will bring a sudden abrupt end to the investigation. There are some complainants who insist on the EMA's intervention for matters even outside our jurisdiction. On some occasions, we are verbally abused. They are loud complainants, and they're just not willing to listen and are extremely difficult to communicate with. Rest assured, some of us, we have the training to deal with very difficult complainants. And as I said before, we make every effort to respond to these citizen complaints. And final challenge is that some complainants demand immediate action because of their status position. Just to let you know that all complaints are treated fairly and equally through our investigation process. So now, at this point of the investigation flowchart, I will now hand you over to Matthew Jardin, who will take you through from the assessment of the complaints and through the site visits.
Thank you, Steve. So I'm going to take you through the EMA legislation now. So looking at the Environmental Management Act, of course, the primary legislation that the EMA is governed by. ERI specifically pertains to Section 16, 22, 25, 62, and Section 61, which is with regards to notification of spills, releases, and other incidents. Other subsidiary legislation under the EMA Act includes the Certificate of Environmental Clearance Rules, where you will find the Designated Activities Order, the Noise Pollution Control Rules, Water Pollution Rules, Air Pollution Rules, and the Environmentally Sensitive Areas and Species. Next slide. Under Section 22 of the Environmental Management Act, it refers to the investigative capabilities of the EMA. It gives the inspectors the permission to enter sites, obtain information, samples, and relevant to any offense or violation, and also any provision or requirement under the Act. So most of the complaints received by the hotline and investigated by ERI fall under one of 5 categories. These are auto body and auto mechanical garages, woodworking shops, land clearing, establishment of a poultry farm and other cattle farming, illegal quarrying and mining. We also get numerous complaints regarding noise from parties, fetes, bars, construction sites, and from noisy equipment such as generators and industrial AC units. Here's an example of an auto body garage in 2018 that was investigated. As you can see, the facility is very simple. There is no kind of enclosure of the facility. The spray painting is done out in the open, leading to major impact to surrounding residents. And then you can see an auto mechanical garage here where oil canisters are stored over a municipal drain. These types of facilities, there are no kind of mitigation for environmental impact, generally kept in a very disorganized manner. And these are the kind of facilities we try to investigate and to enforce against. Here's an example of a wood workshop. Also, you can see it's quite disorganized. Wood is stored everywhere, although there is very little sawdust on the ground is kept in a relatively clean manner. But as you can see, there's also an open area in the top left corner of the photo. That means that dust and spray paint fumes can escape and affect surrounding receptors. Here's an example of a quarry on the left. This quarry here, as you can see, is a major environmental degradation. We remove all vegetation from the area and, of course, removing a lot of material from the site. This could lead to issues such as flooding, as well as also the photo to the right with logging, where trees are removed for commercial gain. And that could also lead to a lot of flooding. So moving on, so we're going to look at now what happens after receiving a complaint. So under section 16, the coordination with other government agencies, we look to coordinate our response to particular complaints by involving other agencies who may also have concurrent jurisdiction for certain matters. Since 2015, we've seen an increased rate of referral to these other agencies. And we also request joint agency investigation, which means that other agencies will be asked to join us on site visits so that all parties can be aware of what's happening with regards to that complaint. The state agencies that we tend to liaise with include Town and Country Planning Division, Municipal Corporations, County Medical Office of Health, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Drainage Division, Housing Development Corporation, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Environment, as well as the Department of the Environment and the THE. As you can see also, there are also the legislations that govern those agencies. So moving on to now site visits. When conducting a site visit, firstly, we try to identify the owner or the manager of the site. We gather contact information. This is simply so that we can reach out to the owner of the site for further information following the site visit. Also, just to verify identification. And also, basically, we can link them to the site. We want to determine when the site was established, when the activity began. And that's just so that we can align with the EMA Act when the Designated Activities Order was enacted in 2001. We want to observe any potential hazards on the site, as well as possible receptors beyond the site. We want to obtain any evidence of approvals and certifications for the activities conducted on the site. This is approval such as Town and Country Planning approval, as well as EMA approval through Certificate of Environmental Clearances or source registration or water permits and air permits. We would like also to interview the owner or manager of the site. This is to gather further information on the types of activities being conducted. We get an idea of how the activity is conducted, and we can see what part of the process will lead to potential impact. We also take photos of the site. This is to help us evidence to support our observations and in our reports. Here's an example of the photos that are taken on the site. So this is just to help provide a visual representation of what the officer represents in his reports. We can see that there is equipment on the site. This is an auto mechanical garage. We can see the work is actually being conducted. There is equipment consistent with auto mechanical garage. Here's an example of an auto body shop, and you can see the mitigation measures that they have taken to reduce impact. There are a number of spray paint rooms which help to reduce any kind of expelling of any kind of air pollutant from the spray painting process. And here's an example of a wood workshop that has been fully enclosed. Although there is a significant amount of dust and it does seem to be kept in a fairly disorganized manner, there is full enclosure, meaning that it helps to keep the escaping of dust. It helps to reduce the escaping of dust from the site, reducing impact on the surrounding receptors. So once the site visit is completed, we evaluate the findings from the site visit. We take the interview statements and they're assessed based on the observations made by the investigating officer. Officers make observations on their own, and then also they try to align it with the interview statements. If things aren't adding up, then obviously we know that there's further investigation required. The photos are also assessed to ensure that there's evidence to support the observations made by the officer. These photos also help in terms of if the officer missed anything on the site. Also it helps when making a legal claim against the person that they're investigating. Using the information gathered during the site visit, we consult the Environmental Management Act just to ensure that to determine whether there's a breach of an environmental requirement. We also determine if there's any other jurisdictions that need to be explored as well. So Town and Country Planning, as what I mentioned before, as well as OSHA, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, as well as the regional corporations. So under Section 62 of the Environmental Management Act, there are 12 environmental requirements. These include complying with procedures of registration of pollutants released into the environment, to comply with procedures and standards such as permits, licenses, or licenses for pollutants released into the environment, to provide accurate information in a timely manner as requested by the EMA, to refrain from unauthorized activities near environmentally sensitive areas and environmentally sensitive species habitats, to comply with licenses such as handling hazardous substances, to apply for and obtain a certificate of environmental clearance for any activities that may require one, to comply with conditions and mitigation measures in any such certificate, to comply with procedures, continual monitoring of pollutants under the permit, which is the responsibility of the permit holder, to provide a timely and accurate notification of accidental unauthorized releases of pollutants on incident with hazardous substances, to control of release of pollutants, comply with the permit or license, to submit timely payment of required fees and charges to the authority, and to comply with all other requirements prescribed by the rules or regulations. And now I'd like to pass you back to Steve to take you through the feedback from other agencies.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you very much. So now that we've covered what is involved when a complaint is received, when to assess and assign an investigating officer, where we determine whether another agency may be involved, we conduct a joint site visit, we assess the site visit findings. Now it is important at this stage of the investigation process to get the feedback from the other agencies in terms of what were the intended actions and whether they have approval for the activity. So feedback from the agencies, we want to find out what is their intended course of action to investigate and or to resolve the complaint. And even more important, the EMA would like to get whether approval will be granted for the activity at the site. This will be primarily from the Common Frontier Planning Division for planning and zonal issues, as well as the municipal corporation through their legislation, whether they approve of certain structures or development within their jurisdiction. And thereafter, then the EMA will be able to determine what is our next course of action. So in terms of action in the flow chart, we will then determine whether there's any breach of an environmental requirement that requires enforcement or what is the next action to be taken. So under enforcement action, we will then determine based on the agency saying, given feedback that approval will be granted for the particular activity at the site, then the EMA will assess what is the next course of action to pursue enforcement action. However, it should be noted that a person's activity may have a significant amount of outstanding work, and they may present opportunities for them to apply to the EMA for a permit, whether it's a CC or any other permit. It is hopefully at this stage of the investigation process that the complaint is resolved, whereby action is taken by another agency or approval from other agency with concurrent jurisdiction is in place, whether the EMA pursues enforcement action for breach of an environmental requirement, whether the person is notified to apply for EMA permit, and then as well as to monitor if there's an issue permit by the EMA. So to give you an idea who really performs this role right now, the Emergency Response and Investigation Unit, just to give you a history and role of it. The unit was formed in 2014 following that big oil spill in Labrador in 2013, and it was primarily to build EMA's capacity in responding to and investigating incidents. The ERI also investigates unregulated activity, which we have been mentioning about complaints under Section 22. We coordinate with other agencies to ensure compliance of the EM Act and other relevant environmental regulations in accordance with Section 16. We investigate environmental emergencies such as spills and releases of hydrocarbons and other hazardous substances under Section 25. Members of the ERI also attend regional coordinating meetings at the municipal corporations, and we've noticed that there's been an increased rate of investigation and greater compliance since everything has been streamlined through HOTLINE and through the EMA's investigation process. The ERI also lends support in terms of increased public outreach because we always interact with complainants, person complain against, or even any other stakeholders. Finally, we provide support to other EMA units and departments. The objectives of the ERI unit is founded based on our existing strategic plan of the EMA, which runs from 2017 to 2021. And this strategic plan is in alignment with the National Development Plan, Vision 2030, as well as the United Goals, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So just to round it off in terms of the key activities from ERI, we are involved in complaints handling in terms of when it's received, categorized, assessed, assigned for investigation. The investigation is conducted whether by ourselves or with another agency in accordance with certain applications. If there's a breach of an environmental requirement or to determine what's the next course of action. And one other key activity of the ERI is responding to emergency response on a 24-hour basis. Section 25, as I mentioned, of the EM Act speaks about environmental emergencies, and it's very important to note that this is more or less a very coordinated function where we have to consult with the minister as well as coordinate with other agencies in order to enact a particular response. All of this information in terms of the legislation and other material you can find on the EMA's website for more details. Environmental emergencies that require an immediate response involve complaints being escalated, such as oil spills, whether it's on or offshore, land or in the river. Sometimes we use a threshold of approximately 10 barrels, but out of abundance of caution, we don't know the nature of the environment. We expect to look into all matters where there's an oil spill. For chemical spills as well, we look at onshore, offshore, land, and within river areas. We also respond to gas leaks, but in this particular case, due to limited resources, we would reach out to other agencies such as the NBC, who would have more sophisticated and more technically equipment to deal with monitoring and detection. And finally, when there are mass animal incidents, dead fish kills and dead animals, we will respond. So this is just to give you some snapshots of some investigations that we have done on oil spill in Labrador in 2015. To my right is the oil spill within the Carney River in 2012. This here is a pic of the oil spill that happened in 2017, which caused significant pollution to the marine environment. Throughout the course of responding to an environmental emergency, as I said before, is coordination. And this here is a list of agencies that we coordinate with. The municipal corporations, the Ministry of Energy, the DPM, EMA to provide scientific support in terms of sampling and analysis. The disaster management units, who are the first responders on the ground when there's an incident. Maritime Services Division for matters within the maritime area. Coast Guard and Air Guard for surveillance. In cases where there's mammal stranding, there's a marine mammal stranding network who has a competent cadre of professionals when dealing with stranded mammals. The Fisheries Division, when we have to respond to dead fishes or anything that the Fisheries Division could assist us with. Sometimes we reach out to the game wardens or other officials of the wildlife section or the forestry division. The veterinary diagnostic lab under the Ministry of Agriculture to lend support in terms of doing necropsies and testing. Ministry of Health when there's any public health nuisance, and National Gas Company and others. So these are some pics of some other incidents that we will be responding to. Fish kill incident in Labrador in 2015. And to my right, dead birds in Carney in 2012. This here is a pic of officials from the veterinary lab, diagnostic lab, doing an on-site necropsy of a dead pelican to determine what could have caused its death. Prior to 2015, there would have been a lot of incidents of landfill fire from Beetham and other landfills. And there have been some success stories through our coordinating with the different municipal corporations and some calls. So now they more or less have a handle on these things. To my right is the national phenomenon of lignite burning, which we continue to coordinate with agencies such as the ODPM Disaster Management Unit whenever they happen and the fire services to resolve. We've also responded to mud volcano and provided support in terms of air monitoring, such as the Paro mud volcano incident in 2011, and more recently the Devil's Vineyard activity in South Trinidad. We've also responded to some gas leaks. Even with gas leak, through our coordinating function, we have liaised with the National Gas Company. To my left, there was an incident at the Twin City Mall, and to the right, persons were attempting to decommission all McCaffrey cylinders, which caused a nuisance to the entire community. This table here just gives you an idea of the quantity of complaints that we register, tickets created that are investigated by the EMA. In 2015 and 2016, just over 1,100. In 2017, just under 900. 2018 and 2019, just averaging 700. And to date, just over 300 in 2020. So this gives you an idea of the number of tickets for just a complement of 5 investigators, 1 regional coordinator, 1 manager, and 2 ATO duties to address for the entire Trinidad. Matters in Tobago, we reach out to our EMA Tobago office for assistance in terms of investigating to resolve. Rounding off in this presentation, we would like to highlight how persons can assist the EMA through our investigation process. The first way is persons, if they can provide accurate information, such as the address, the directions, the nature of the activity, hours of operation, and the history of complaints. Secondly, persons can avoid misleading the EMA and or the public. And another way that you can assist the EMA is to inform the EMA of any changes to the site or the facility or the activity. This is important because if an investigation has not been initiated and the operations have come to an end, it would mean that we could then redirect our resources to other priorities. So just to quote from the National Environment Policy of 2018, all stakeholders therefore have a critical role in ensuring a sustainable future for Trinidad and Tobago. What is even more important, and you can find it in the NEP, the National Environmental Policy, sustainable development, as defined in the Brundtland Report, is defined as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. This here is our contact information to reach the EMA, our website, or Facebook, Instagram. We are also available on YouTube. And our corporate office is located at 8 Elizabeth Street, Sinclair. So now we will now pause and entertain any questions and provide answers that we can to these questions.
Prior to the formation of the ERI, how did the EMA respond to claims? Steve, would you be willing to respond to that question?
Sure, Marcia. Since the inception of the EMA and the EM Act and the subsidiary legislation, the EMA would have received complaints or where the person is querying claims, I'm assuming is the complaints that they're referring to. And these complaints would have been investigated in some way or the other. Since the inception of ERI, everything has been more or less streamlined to make sure that there's better efficiency and productivity in terms of investigating and resolving the complaints in a faster time frame. So to answer your question, yes, the EMA did respond similarly to what was presented. However, the time frames may have been a little longer than what we actually do now.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, so while we await another question in the chat box, I just want to update you on the Greenleaf Awards 2020. The judges are in the process of looking at the submissions that have been brought forward, and we're hoping to finalize everything so that we can have a virtual Greenleaf Awards ceremony in December, hopefully early December. So I just wanted to apprise you of that we had extended the deadline to the 30th of September, and we are now working. Well, I would want to say not the EMA, because we have to distance ourselves from that process. We have a steering committee of judges who come from different disciplines and also from different government agencies and entities, ministries, also the private sector and the civil society organizations. So they are the ones who are reviewing these applications to determine who goes forward with respect to receiving Greenleaf Awards. So I just wanted to share that with you. We have a question that has just come. Thanks for today's presentation. What is the EMA's hotline that the public can use for any complaints or investigations? What is the EMA's hotline that the public can use for any complaints or investigations?
Hi, Matthew. All the information is available on the EMA's website as well. And you can call into the EMA to lodge a complaint, to report, if that's the question. Between Mondays and Fridays, between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., the number is 226-4362 for EMA. and you are selecting option 2, which is to lodge your complaint. You also have the email option. You could write into the EMA. For environmental emergencies, which I described in the latter part of the presentation for oil spills and animal deaths, the hotline number is 680-9588. But your first form of contact should be the complaints hotline, 2264 EMA, as well as emailing or writing into the EMA.
Thank you very much, Steve. Another question. Can you give a breakdown of the complaints made over the past 10 years? How many were for noise, pollution, etc., and their current status? I'd like to encourage you to email if you have more than 2 questions, because we're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. And some of the questions would, particularly that question, would require some detail, which we probably won't have enough time. So please email us at emawebinars@ema.co.tt. Thank you so much. Next question. Congrats, EMA, for today's information. Oh, thank you so much. You're most welcome. I would like to find out if I call and lodge a complaint, how long will it take before I get a response? Does someone call me back? Would Matthew like to respond to that question?
Sure, Marcia. So to answer the question, yes, someone will call you back. If you would have remembered the process flow chart, initially what happens is that once the complaint is made and all the necessary information has been assessed, and it's assigned to an investigating officer, the investigating officer will then call the complainant to gather further information before proceeding on a site visit. Once gathering this information, a determination of the type of response required will be determined, meaning whether an emergency response is required or whether time can be taken. We tend to prioritize due to the number of complaints. We prioritize certain matters over others, mainly due to the potential for health impacts, environmental impacts, national incidents, that kind of stuff. So it changes from complaint to complaint. However, the response, meaning the actual call made back to you by the investigating officer, should be within a week or 2.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I hope that clarifies for everyone. I know many people, many members of the public are concerned that their complaints are not addressed as speedily as they would like them to. Steve was very, very clear about outlining the process. This process applies to everyone in the public. So thank you, Matthew, for that response.
Excuse much, Marcia. I would also like to add that persons can email into the EMA given the COVID pandemic. We may not always be able to take the calls, but once emails come in, at some point the emails will be responded to. So that definitely is the best way to reach out to us. Emails are usually responded to within the next working day to answer the person's question about response from the EMA.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Steve. EMA, I have a noise complaint. Children are at home, but many neighbors in my area are playing music loudly day and night. Can the EMA assist in stopping the noise in residential areas? Would Steve or Matthew want to take that question? Should I repeat it? I have a noise complaint. Children at home are at home, but many neighbors in my area are playing music loudly day and night. Can the EMA assist in stopping the noise in residential areas?
Before I answer what the EMA can do, I would like to encourage the person who is making the complaint that they can reach out to the district police station to lodge a complaint, which the police officers would be able to address under the legislation under their purview. This is a very tricky situation because with the COVID protocol, a lot of persons are working from home. Children are actually online school at home, and you have persons working at home in terms of increased activity. So it would be a nuisance, but at the end of the day, there needs to be striking a balance. How the EMA can assist? We can assist after you've made contact with the police station. We can assist through a coordinating function to liaise with the district police station through our environmental police unit to follow up on how the complaint is being addressed. That is the way that the EMA can assist in this type of complaint.
Okay, we have another question, and I would urge everyone who's posing questions, no more than 2, but we will answer your questions if you send them via email at emawebinars.co.ct. This question, has the EMA received any complaints regarding the oil tanker in Venezuelan waters and the threat posed to the Caribbean Sea, which will undoubtedly affect TNT? At the moment, we have not experienced any spill, but I will hand you over to Steve, who would give you some more insight into that issue.
Yes, so with respect to this particular incident and based on the presentation that was presented before, one of the ways that the EMA would receive complaints to investigate is through the media. And we would have been notified through the media that there was a potential harm to the environment, a potential incident concerning this alleged vessel in the Venezuelan territory. The EMA is providing the support to the lead agencies to address this matter. So to answer your question, yes, the EMA has received the complaint, which is from the media and from other correspondences, and the EMA is providing support to the lead agencies to address this matter.
Thank you very much, Steve. While we await another question in the chat box, I'd just like to share with you our next webinar, which will be on the 3rd of November, Tuesday, 3rd of November, which will be very different, but very important and exciting. This is a project, a regional project that the EMA has been involved in for the last 2.5 years. It's called the IWECO. That's the acronym for Integrated Water, Land and Ecosystems Management. And it's, as I said, a regional project, about 14 CARICOM countries. And this presentation will highlight what activities Trinidad and Tobago has undertaken in the IWECO project. So something to look forward to, which is a little different. And as I said, it's regional, so it has great impact, and we have worked with many different stakeholders on this project. Good day, EME. Thank you for these information sessions. Forgive me, I'm just trying to clear the chat. Thank you. I am interested in studying more on environmental investigations. Do you have information that you can share for a student or anyone wanting to study more in this area? Do you have information that you can share? And perhaps I can just give you a little information here about the information. We have an information center. Unfortunately, now it's closed, but you can send emails. But under normal circumstances, the Information Center, which is a resource library, provides all kinds of information on all disciplines, on all categories, and we have many students who come in here to do research. I believe you can send an email to the EMA, and the librarian will respond to you with the information, and it will be dealt with from that perspective. Thanks for this session. What constitutes an environmental emergency? What constitutes an environmental emergency? Steve, would you like to tackle that one?
Sure. Everything that we do at the EMA is guided by the EM Act and its subsidiary legislation. And under Section 25, which speaks about environmental emergencies, it clearly outlines, and you can visit the website, the webinar session when it's posted, and take a look at this slide, Section 25, where we will coordinate with the other agencies whenever there's an environmental emergency. So primarily those that receive attention from the EMA right now are those like, for example, oil spills and gas leaks, as well as animal deaths incidents.
Okay, so the question following up on this one. So if I notice a fish kill or oil spill, what should I do next?
Right, so we provided all the contact information. In a case like this, you will contact the EMA's emergency hotline 680-9588, where we will receive the information, and then we will coordinate with the agencies as well as where applicable, conduct an emergency site visit, meaning we go out on site as soon as possible to determine what's happening there. In the case of an oil spill, if we are unable to determine where the source of the spill emanated from, we will have to engage other agencies to help us in identifying where it came from. It may require fingerprinting, sampling, etc., where folks at the IMA may be able to assist us, as well as if it goes to a private lab. In the case with a fish kill, my understanding, a fish kill could be either a fish dump or a fish kill. And I know that the IMA went at length in terms of explaining the difference. So a fish kill could be seeing numerous species of different sizes in the environment, whereas a fish dump may be a particular species of a particular size that you observe in the environment. So again, the person who posed the question can contact us directly through the email at webinar@ema.co.tt, and we'll be able to provide a more pointed response.
Thank you very much, Steve. And before I go on to the next question, I would just like to let you know that the poll is going to be launched now. As I said before, 4 very short questions. You have 3 minutes, and then the poll will end. So the next question: does the EMA issue fines to persons who negatively affect the environment? Does the EMA issue fines to persons who negatively affect the environment?
Again, that question requires a collaborative response from a number of our departments. Please write into us at the webinar email address, and you will certainly receive a response to your query.
Thank you, Steve. So we're just waiting for another question to pop up in the chat box, but I'd just like to continue to let you know, or to tell you once more, that this presentation, this afternoon session, the entire proceedings will be uploaded to our website with a link to our YouTube page by tomorrow afternoon. So I know it might have been a lot of information for you to absorb, but you will have the opportunity to look at it once again and to really go through and identify the areas where you may have had questions or needed more information, because as we know, it was a very comprehensive presentation giving you all the information that's required regarding the EMA's investigation process. Help EMA. This is another question that has come in the chat box. Help EMA. I experience an ongoing nuisance from the dumping of waste in my street, and garbage collectors only pass once a week. I tried the regional corporation, but no redress as yet. What should I do, or can the EMA help if I call the hotline? I'll just repeat because there are a couple parts of that question. Help EMA. I experience an ongoing nuisance from the dumping of waste in my street, and garbage collectors only pass once a week. I tried the regional corporation, but no redress as yet. What should I do, or can the EMA help if I call the hotline? Thank you, Matthew, for addressing this question.
So primarily the agency to deal with such an issue would be the regional corporation. You can contact the EMA. We would liaise with the regional corporation, so that would be how we can assist. However, the regional corporation is the primary agency responsible for that. The hotline will revert it to the agency. They will contact the regional corporation and inform them. If there are other matters involved that potentially fall within the EMA's jurisdiction, we can investigate those and also refer the dumping of the garbage to the regional corporation as part of that investigation as well.
Thank you, Matthew. Another question. You mentioned coordinating with other agencies. If I make a complaint to the EMA, do I have to also make the same complaint to all other agencies that may be responsible? Steve, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, simply the answer is yes. You should make a complaint, lodge your complaint at the different sister agencies that would be able to address the complaint. As a matter of fact, this is one of the strategies that we are using when coordinating, when we are conducting our investigation, to do a joint investigation with these agencies so that everyone is on the same page when it deals with the complaint?
Thank you, Steve. This is a very important question, and I'm going to read it right now, and I hope that everyone who's listening will actually take into consideration and have faith in the EMA when the response is given. The question is, if I make it complete, does the EMA keep my identity confidential? And I think I will ask Steve to respond to that question, having had 10 years experience dealing with these kinds of issues. The complaint, does the EMA keep my identity confidential?
Yeah, sure, Marcia. So the EMA's investigation process, all information remains confidential. We are not in the business to go and divulge information when we are investigating the party that is complained against. However, persons need to note that under the Freedom of Information Act, that if a request is made specifically for certain information, the EMA is obliged to provide such information. So it is only up to a point that you can remain confidential, but as I said, the EMA and none of its EMA officers will go out into the field or divulge who is the complainant. All we can say is that we are investigating the nature of a particular activity that is causing some sort of environmental impact to environmental receptors. I hope that answered the question to the person.
Yes, thank you, Steve. We have time for one more question because it's just 3 minutes shy of 2 p.m. So is there any other question that will be coming up in the chat box? Anything burning or pressing that anyone would want to have some kind of clarification on? Well, I see no more questions in the chat box, so I would like to thank you, participants, for joining us this afternoon. Your feedback was very positive and we're very happy that you have had some redress with respect to some of the things that you are concerned about. Again, I'd like to invite you to join us on the 3rd of November for our next webinar, which will be on the IRECO project, Integrating Water, Land and Ecosystems Management. And as I said before, this is a very exciting project, and I'm sure the session will be very beneficial to you. Please remember, tomorrow afternoon, please go on our website. You will see today's session. And if you care to go onto our YouTube page, it will also be there. So thank you. Be safe. Please adhere to all the COVID-19 guidelines as prescribed by the Ministry of Health. Be safe and have a good evening, everyone.